Why do we learn to value our lifetime so late? Why don't we treat our lifetime as our most valuable asset? Why do we feel like the time of the day slips through our fingers as if it were nothing? I thank my God for allowing me to show you how the future of humanity depends on two variables, and that if we don't act on these, we could face an imminent collapse in societies in less than a decade. The first variable is the historical devaluation we have given to our lifetime. And the second one, it's a technological variable that only started accompanying us about 30 years ago. It's about the speed of data transmission that gave rise to digital immersion technology. I will start by showing you the equation formulated to explain this theory, where the main variable is the antichronos or anti-time, with the antichronos being the phenomenon that leads individuals not to value their lifetime and in turn interferes with their response, respect for your life and for creation. This is affected by a first variable, which is the declining importance of lifetime. What do I mean when I talk about the declining importance of lifetime? Look at this curve. It's the approximate pattern of the value we give to our time. From 0 to 15 years old, our perception of the value of time is practically non-existent. If a little cart selling time appeared, like those ice cream carts from childhood, we would say we don't care because we have a whole life ahead of us. By around 20 years old, the perception starts to rise slightly because we are without projects and jobs that involve a minimal level of planning, but we see time simply as a variable, schedules for activities and university projects, without this having anything to do with planning our lifetime. From 25 to 30 years old, physical and biological signs start to appear, like gray hairs and small wrinkles that indicate that time is passing, along with some biological factors like fertility issues in couples, which alert us about the passage of time. This raises the curve a bit more, but not enough. By the time we reach 40, we have the self-check of achievements, which is that pressure where our parents and society guide us to think we should have children, a house, a car, and this somehow makes us give greater importance to time in that validation. Health checkups also appear at 40, which are recommended by the medical system. In women, for example, there are mammograms, and in the case of men, prostate checkups, which are health screenings that undoubtedly make us value our time more. For reminding us that it's already happening, by the time we reach 50, the level of importance takes a bigger leap because perhaps in our minds, 50 years represents the halfway point of our life. And we start to say we've already reached half a coupon, we've reached the peak, and now we're on the way down, and that reaffirms its importance. And from 60 onwards, when we see that our natural limit of life is approaching, the value of time starts to increase exponentially for those of us who love life. Now look at those two peaks. Do you know what they are? They represent that day we went to the doctor and he said, "I see something unusual, I need you to get some tests done." And during that week, while we waited for the results of those tests, the uncertainty and fear of the worst made the peak of the value of our lifetime rise. Or the day when we ourselves got COVID and they said that if you got infected on the 8th or 9th day, everything would get worse. And we were terrified, waiting for that moment to arrive. And there, the value of our time reached its highest expression. Now, think for a moment about that peak. Do you know what happens over there? Over there, it's worth nothing. It doesn't matter how many cars you have in your garage, how much money you have in the bank, or how many houses you own. In fact, if that ice cream cart that sold time from your childhood showed up, you would give everything you had just to buy a few more hours. Do you also know what happens up there at that peak? That's where promises are made to God, to your wife or husband, to your children, and to yourself, where you say, "I'm going to change if I get out of this. I'll be a different person. I'll dedicate myself to family. I'll take that trip I've been putting off." But the reality is that in most cases, after a couple of days, everything goes back to normal. The event is forgotten and everything becomes part of an anecdote. This is what I call not valuing the time of life. And by not valuing the time of life, we become procrastinators attached to material things, always postponing happiness, often wasting time in other people's lives, and sometimes for the worse, with excessive productivity, forgetting that the most important things we have at home without giving importance to the relationship between time and health. And in the vast majority of cases, we end up with an unfulfilled old age for not having fully enjoyed all the stages of life due to ignorance of them. But we should not blame ourselves for being like this, since this disvalue for lifetime was induced by the history that led us to be what we are, because we suffered from slavery, servitude, plagues, pests, wars in all ages, from negative philosophical influences to the point that even at this moment we cannot see an eclipse because we think the world is going to end. And many of us also err in interpreting the promise of eternal life conveyed by different religions, without realizing that to achieve it we must fully embrace our earthly existence and therefore the time we live now. Tell me, with these historical scenarios, who would stop to value life's time? This devaluation of life's time was also influenced in the contemporary era, about 200 years ago, by the adoption of the Prussian model in the universal education system. This model, born in Prussia under the direction of Frederick II, was designed to guide students towards the pursuit of material things and to train soldiers for war. It was reintroduced to many nations during the industrialization era in the 19th century and continues to leave its mark today. This is the main reason why the current school system is weak in promoting the fundamental values necessary for life, including the value of time. All of this has affected and shaped our perception of the value of life's time, keeping it historically at a very low level. However, with all of the above, we could say that until now we were doing quite well, because since the world began, we have survived with this erroneous behavior until just about 30 years ago, when a new variable was introduced, the speed of data transmission and its progressively exponential increase, which paved the way for digital immersion technology, making this the third variable in the equation, the rising speed of information. I share with you its birth. I remember in the 90s during my electronics studies when the teachers would say in class that we were in a global race to get the best semiconductors, which back then were germanium and silicon. This allowed for the manufacturing of integrated circuit transistors for CPU memory, and this improved rapidly starting in the 90s in the quest for faster computers. A second element joined this, which was the communication channel, where direct cable was explored, like point-to-point antenna connections, satellite antennas, until we reached the greatest of all discoveries in this area, the famous fiber optic. Finally, the triad was completed by the need for a communication protocol for data, starting from its birth in the 60s with ARPANET, going through TCP/IP and arriving at the protocol that was born in the 90s and has evolved to this day, which has been WebE1, WebE2, and WebE3, bringing with it all the technological benefits derived from the high speed of information transmission, but at the same time finding a vulnerable population. This started back in the 90s when it began with the speed we knew, accompanied by that typical sound. This represented 56 kilobits per second, and to date we have grown to 600 gigabits per second, which is an increase of 10.7 billion times more than back then. And why does the speed of information affect us? This is due to the behavior of our brain, which has a response to information processing at a high limit and a low limit. In the case of the low limit, an example is when we face an image that is shown to us at less than 24 frames per second. Our brain doesn't have the capacity to process it, and in that sense what it does is try to reconstruct it and watch it flicker like we can see in old movies. We can also see it in what is called the aliasing effect, which is when we observe the propeller of an airplane in motion, and at some point we can see that it stops in front of our eyes, or we see it rotating at a very low speed, these being examples of the behavior of our brain in the face of the low speed limit of information captured through our eyes. Now, regarding our brain's behavior at the high limit of information, when a person is exposed to a high speed of information, they face a phenomenon known as information overload or sensory overload. This excess of stimuli can lead to a dispersion of attention, known as fragmented attention, and as a result of this and the natural release of dopamine, the person experiences moments when they focus or immerse themselves in specific information. This is what we call immersion. This immersion can be found at all ages and ranges, from the consumption of virtual networks like metaverses and artificial intelligence, to the consumption of content on video streaming platforms, digital gaming environments in mixed reality, and even in the endless scrolling or infinite feed on phones, which consumes a lot of an individual's time on social media. This immersion causes the individual to enter a sort of trance and disconnect from reality to the point where you could call them, and they're fully focused on their virtual world. Now we find ourselves with what should have never happened. A vulnerable individual who never valued their lifetime, faced with highly addictive immersive technology. A lethal combination that, believe it or not, is putting the future of humanity at risk. Let me show you why. Before the 90s, we enjoyed about 16 hours a day of contact with reality, having a natural disconnection of 8 hours, which is for sleep. Starting in the 90s, there was a progressive decrease in the time available for contact with reality, first dropping with the arrival of Web 1, then with the emergence of social networks in Web 2, and now the metaverse with Web 3. Statistics show that we have a disconnection from reality of about 4 to 5 hours a day. As you can see in this table, the number of hours affected in adults is significant, leading to the waste of intellectual and specialized hours that are necessary for problem solving and even for creation and connection with the environment. And for children and adolescents, it's even worse, since you're undermining the available hours for their development as the next generation, destroying the valuable time in the window for learning higher cognitive processes. This is the crucial moment because that's where maximum learning absorption occurs. You can see in the chart how just 3 recurring hours a day add up to 1,095 hours a year. This is practically how long a school year lasts. So, the greater the virtual immersion, the less time we have available for contact with reality. We're running out of time. And you might be wondering, why do we need this time? To this I respond, we have wasted too many intellectual and specialized hours, and we urgently need them to address the terror our children face from bullying in schools. To understand the relationship between video games and war toys that are shaping our children's brains and leading them towards an aggressive future, we need hours from experts dedicated to analyzing how to eliminate drug use among adolescents in educational institutions. To analyze the unacceptable disrespect towards the teachers who guide the future of our children, where the aggression towards them is increasing every day. To analyze the impact we are having on our big home, our planet. For that, we need hours, and we're running out of them. There aren't even enough hours available to address the 5 plastic islands we have in our oceans. We're talking about the Pacific alone having approximately 1.8 million square kilometers, which is about 3 times the size of France or nearly the size of Mexico, and we can't even address it because we don't have enough available hours from professionals. It's incredible, we're even searching for other planets to live on when we can't even take care of our own due to a lack of specialized time. We need time to analyze and take action, act on the reasons that lead all those brothers who have been torn from their roots and thrown into the abyss. We need time to eradicate the hunger that devours lives in the world. To tackle the major health challenges in research and medical care that humanity demands, it takes time to analyze why children are being involved in gender ideologies for which they still do not have the maturity to understand. We also need time to analyze and understand why we dared to step into the territory of our Creator. The Antichronos is so powerful that as humanity we have 1 foot back in barbarism and we haven't even realized it. Now I ask you to please take a look at this graph. On the top side, you can see how the orange curve drops in 1945, which was when World War II ended with a promise of unity, progress, and brotherhood among all countries. But now, after all this time, we are back at the top. All the problems of the planet have been exacerbated. 7 active wars currently with 1 potentially nuclear. We also have famine and other ailments of the planet. In general, everyone has a peak at the worst moment, which is when we have the least available hours to solve things, because individuals and therefore societies are wasting their hours in the world of immersion, creating this gap you see in the graph, with this gap being a consequence of the Antichronos. And just for those who think that these lost hours, products of the Antichronos, can be replaced by hours of artificial intelligence, I respond that to solve these problems in our world, we need hours filled with compassion, tolerance, generosity, solidarity, and empathy. And this is something that artificial intelligence will never have, or maybe not for a long time. And in the meantime, the problems keep increasing. Our society is becoming more indifferent due to immersion, placing more importance on appearances, on likes on social media, than on the principle of helping our neighbor. Wasting time chasing a false floor reference where behind it there are many lies and where few succeed. In an increasingly deep immersion that disconnects us from what makes us human, the connection with nature, with our surroundings, and with family. And in the meantime, the problems keep increasing. The recklessness disguised as fun in social media challenges has claimed lives and put the integrity of many people at risk, showing that the pursuit of likes and popularity can have tragic, irreparable consequences. So, what's coming next? What should we prepare for? What's coming is more speed and consequently greater immersion. There are already studies at Aston University where 301 terabits are promised for the year 2025, which represents 4.5 million times more than the speed we currently have on our home network. NVIDIA has surpassed the CPU and now has a powerful GPU. At the University of Glasgow, they are already studying 6G. All of this is good news for the technology that will be integrated into our networks, but it will increase immersion. So we will have an evolution of the virtual reality lens in the next 5 years that will be something amazing, where it will be the size of a conventional lens replacing the current mobile phone, and you will be able to have the networks and all the immersion services available. They will even evolve to the size of a contact lens. This will fulfill the triad of a successful business in less than a decade. Addictive, cheap, and widely available, which will make it accessible to the entire global population. What will happen? It will increase immersion to unimaginable levels, reducing the hours available in contact with the reality of societies to zero, and with the consequences derived from this. It is not about going against technology because technology brings benefits to humanity. It's about the fact that technology caught us vulnerable, unprepared because we didn't value our lifetime. In this sense, the global population needs to prepare to face technology and coexist and grow with it, because this is an evolutionary indicator. If we want to solve the problem, we must tackle the root cause, and regarding the variables of the antichronos, we can only act on the importance of lifetime since the speed of information will continue to grow due to human nature. By doing this, we will be directly influencing the time available in contact with an individual's reality, increasing it and thus reaping the individual and collective benefits of reconnecting with what makes us human. To understand it, I'll show you the first statement of the Antichronos theory. A deep understanding of time changes the perception of life, shaping the valuation of existence based on its fleeting nature. Those who possess this understanding will experience a different perspective than those who lack it. Here was always the key, and we didn't see it in the original gift from our Creator. Understanding the value of time. Early comprehension of lifetime during the critical stage of an individual's cognitive development will lay a solid foundation for a life attitude focused on making the most of it. To achieve a deep understanding, it's crucial to educate children and teenagers to grasp these various concepts that make up this fundamental knowledge. These concepts focus on 4 fundamental pillars. 1. The value of life and creation. 2. The management of lifetime. 3. The gifts and talents for life. And 4. Internal health for lifetime. These pillars will allow us to impart knowledge about the value of nature's gestation and the value of time in the stages of life and the benefits each one offers in the planning and management of time and in building a life purpose, as well as recognizing the finitude of life or death as a fundamental milestone in our life plan. Considering fundamental values and capacities for building a life plan, such as critical and creative thinking, empathy, compassion, respect, public speaking, and love, while incorporating the pillar of internal health and lifetime, which focuses on connecting with and caring for our organs, setting aside the notion of living solely for external appearances. This care also takes into account the emotional aspect of children and teenagers. In this way, we will be able to form a generation that will value its time and know how to invest it in its training to be useful, thus building the next generation. They will respect others' lifetime, being anti-war because they value their own life and that of others. By establishing this theory as a tool for peace, leaders will emerge who promote peace. Having been formed in creation, he will value and care for gestation and nature, protecting them They will value their time and not waste it in the world of virtual investments and social media for leisure, using technology wisely and in balance. They will understand that the purpose of life won't be centered on material things because those will just be a means. They will make the most of all the stages of their life because they know them. Procrastination will be a thing of the past. They will cling to their purpose and their life dream, not to material things. They won't dare to postpone their happiness. They will value their health knowing that it affects their lifetime. This training can be implemented in the educational system of the nations, where the insertion of a knowledge capsule is proposed for one of the 5 school days of the week, and for this, a curriculum plan for early and middle education has already been developed. Another main front for conveying the importance of lifetime is the religions based on the Holy Bible, supported by 3 very powerful verses related to time. One of these is Ecclesiastes 3:1-8. Everything has its time, and everything that is desired under heaven has its hour. This begins by suggesting the presence of time in its perfection. The second is James 4:14. However, you do not know what tomorrow will bring. Your life is just like a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. This undoubtedly speaks to the importance of finitude. The third verse is Ephesians 5:15-16. Therefore be careful how you walk, not as unwise but as wise, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. Powerful words that will drive the planning and management of time. And why use the verses? Throughout history, biblical principles have shaped the laws and ethics of the contemporary world, from you shall not kill, and the penalties derived from the 10 Commandments to the moral and ethical principles that govern our societies. We're talking about 2.3 billion followers of the Holy Bible out of nearly 8 billion people in the world. For this, there is already a proposal to present to the religious authorities that will serve as a guide to convey the knowledge of the value of time based on these 3 verses. And the third channel is through the family, where a deep understanding of time will be strengthened within the family unit, with written guides for that purpose. We're running out of time. The understanding of time provided by great minds like Einstein was important, as he used the power of the value and perception of time to explain gravity and motion in his theories of general and special relativity, but limited only to the world of physics and the exact sciences. What I am saying now is that a deep understanding of time is also powerful in humans, and the key to reversing the antichronic phenomenon is to strengthen this understanding, and the only way to do this is to incorporate this structured knowledge into the world's populations. It is time to act, if not, the societies of the world will face imminent collapse. The solution was always there and we did not see it. We live in a historical error. The solution was always in the primordial gift and its understanding, which is time. I conclude by asking for your help on behalf of humanity to spread this crucial message globally and before the relevant decisive instances. Together we can make a difference and contribute to the improvement of our world. Do it for your family and for your descendants.